Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Shepard here with part 2 of the Dual Blade Compendium for Monster Hunter Rise. Now, if you haven't watched it, part 1 goes over a lot of the basics for dual blades. We're not going to try and retread that ground exactly too much, but it would be important for you to fully understand and appreciate what we're about to talk to in this video if you've seen that. So if you haven't seen it, make sure to go to my playlist and check that out. So yesterday we were only discussing raw damage as it relates to dual blades. Now, we did say the Nargacuga dual blades in the game were very good. If you were comfortable staying in Feral Demon mode and using the Piercing Bind, you could really get through a large number of fights without much issue. That being said, dual blades have historically been at their most powerful while using Element, and this is still true while you're in Rise. So we're going to start off with this weapon here, and we're going to kind of go over how Element applies to our normal combo. So normally what you would expect is every time you attack with your weapon, you would deal whatever your listed elemental damage every time for every strike. So with that in mind, normally you would expect to see lots of elemental build on more fast-hitting weapons. So dual blades, obviously, sometimes Insect Glaive, definitely Sword and Shield, all those weapons, historically at least, and Rise definitely changes things up a little bit, historically have been reasonable when you use Element. Now, if you'll remember our combo from yesterday, it was the normal 6-fold strike. So taking all of our damage in consideration, so raw damage here of 255, along with 33 ice. I'm going to go ahead and throw the damage formula up on screen here. If we were to do a full combo, we would normally expect 235 damage. There's a catch, though. We only did 231 damage. Now, the reason for that is because when we do our full 6-fold strike, this final part of the combo here, this big double slash that brought up those 33s, that attack specifically has a negative modifier to the amount of element you do. So rather than doing 33, it would do 70% of 33, which is 23 rounded down. So you get a little bit less. And this actually, you wouldn't think it would matter so much, but when we're comparing elemental damage against monsters, if all we're doing is comparing just the basic 6-fold strike, we're really not taking into consideration the total damage we're doing over the course of the fight, because obviously we're not just doing 6-fold strikes the whole time. We're going into Feral Demon mode, we're dodging, we're getting a couple hits in, we're dashing away. We might do a full demon dance, stuff like that, which hits a lot, does a lot of elemental damage. Okay, it's worth pointing out that Element, like our raw damage, is modified by sharpness. So Element is dramatically affected by low sharpness. If you're in yellow sharpness, your Element is multiplied by 0.75%. If you're using an elemental weapon, never allow yourself to get into yellow. It's really, really bad. Green is just the full value, it's 1.0. Blue gets a little boost. You get up to 1.0625, and then white takes it all the way up to 1.15. So white is actually pretty significant. You'll definitely start seeing a lot more elemental damage when you're in white. Obviously, you'll also see some pretty big raw boosts as well. Okay, so talking about the elemental weapons, I think we'll go from the bottom of the list and we'll work our way up for Thunder. We're going to address Rampage now, and it's going to be a relatively quick discussion that will end, unfortunately, not very well. So I tested out Rampage for both going with Attack Surge, as well as Affinity Surge, as well as different elemental permutations. Affinity Surge actually came out a little bit ahead, but that being said, the weapons at best will get close to 267 damage or so. And that's even assuming taking them down the path that will get them white sharpness. So I think it's pretty safe to say you can ignore Rampage weapons for now. Now, obviously, they're going to get upgraded down the line. I'm sure we'll be getting Rampage Twin Blades 5. Maybe there'll be some really great options there. You might also be wondering about, can I do double element? Certainly double element is interesting, but we don't have anything in the game that is quite exactly weak enough to both those to even make it worthwhile. I mean, you could try and do Dragon Thunder against Rathalos, but you could also just do like an actual good dragon weapon. So for now, we're going to go ahead and skip those. We can talk about Narwa, and Narwa has a decent amount of thunder, but its attack is so low that even with attack boost, it just is well below everything else. Now, again, similar to Rampage, these are only showing Thunderbolt Blades 1, so we can assume in a future update, these will become Thunderbolt Blades 2. If suddenly something like 40 Thunder and 170 attack dropped on them, or 35 Thunder and White Sharpness dropped on them, they'd be really interesting to take a look at, especially if you like the style of them. They are kind of interesting. You got kind of like a maraca looking thing there. But as it is, there are far better options. Tobi-Kadachi, surprisingly viable. Interesting in the sense that, it gets 26 Thunder. That's a good amount of blue sharpness to work with. It's got 10% affinity. It's got 2 level 1 slots, so you can more easily max out Thunder. You could more easily go ahead and put Speed Sharpen on if you were trying to mitigate your sharpness usage in that regard. Maxing out gets it better than the Rampage dual blades at the very least. We can see that it'll hit for average around 281, which is okay. It still falls, almost 20 points behind our Nargacuga, but not as bad as you would originally think at first glance. Style-wise, absolutely gross. Love what the Rise team has done for all of the original weapons. I have no idea whose idea it was to bring in the old world designs with just like the monster's ass cheeks glued onto a bone blade, though. Really sad. Even if they were good, I wouldn't use them for style purposes. Thunder Tree, barely any thunder. Barely any blue sharpness. You really need handicraft to make it work. No affinity. These are going to end up being worse than Tobi-Kadachi. I didn't even do the math on them, but they are point for point worse in every single way outside of the fact that they're chainsaws. So if you want to use them, you'd build them probably the way that we're going to end up building our full Thunder set. But as it is, these are more meme than even most of the meme weapons that are put in the game. Speaking of meme weapons, Kezu. Actually, some neat little weapons. Can get up to 160 raw. Can get up to 34 thunder. So that is something. It has 10% affinity, has a level 2 slot, has 2 level 1 slots. Interesting aspect of this weapon, obviously, you're looking at it on screen. One hit, I believe your left hand will inflict thunder. Your right hand will obviously 33% of the time inflict paralysis. If you were looking for a dedicated Pookie killer, this is probably not the weapon to use, but if you were to use this weapon on something, it would be okay on Pookie. I did go ahead and do the math. Building it for attack actually does end up being better than building it for element because you're only hitting half the time with the element anyways. Gets 240 damage on average from a full combo. Technically worse than the Rampage weapon. Unfortunately. Does not reach the watermark of a Rampage weapon. Also kind of an interesting weapon design. I'm not really sure what to make of it. It looks like the weapon designers that were working on the weapons from World got assigned to the Kezu Scards. So I really hope in a future update they look better than that, because that's not great for style. So that leaves us with really our last and really in every possible way clear winner of the Thunder weapons, which is, the Zinogre dual blades. Now, they do have a little bit of an issue. With full razor sharp, you can kind of make that blue sharpness work. Obviously, with handicraft, they come out a little bit better. 200 raw is very usable. 31 element is good. I'm not going to say it's necessarily above average, but at least average for dual blades. And it's got a level 2 slot. Now, the Zinogre Jasper may be a little bit difficult to grab, but that's not that bad. Style-wise, love them. They look great. I think, especially thank God for our best Thunder option. They look really, really good. Okay, so I did a lot of playing around with trying to min-max this set out. And I have to say, it was kind of funny along the way. Any set where I feel like I don't have to end up relying on crit element in terms of wanting to calculate out the math is better. Fortunately, our Zinogre dual blades have high enough raw. We almost go for a little bit of a hybrid here, but I think as we go through sets in the future, we'll end up seeing a lot of this anyways. Using a combination of the Baroth Helm along with the Lagambi arms and just our current setup gives us 5 single slots, which means we're always able to max out, for our elemental sets at least, our attack. It also gives us the ability to get 4 points into attack, which is really nice. You start getting scaling attack at that point, right? So you start getting like a flat plus 5%, which means on this weapon, we're going to get 10 plus 7 is 17 raw. It's 8 more raw than level 3. So getting that level 4 boost is super nice. One more would be okay. We would get, 12 plus 8 is 20, which is still just kind of going along the normal trend from before. So getting that 4 points in attack is a huge scaling breakpoint. The fact that we use the Lagambi arms gives us a little bit more crit, which maybe doesn't scale as well as the attack, but it still scales well enough because we do have crit boost. So just to take a look at my set in full, I'm going to use Razor Sharp Weakness Exploit Talisman. If you don't have that, I guess you just need to do at least Weakness Exploit 1. You could always, in theory, if you had Weakness Exploit 2 but not Razor Sharp Weakness Exploit, drop the Scalda, drop Anjanathon, and then run 2 points of Speed Sharpen. And then along with Almudron, that should be good enough. So in terms of monsters you'd want to use Thunder Dual Blades on, we'll just start from the beginning. Tetradon is an obvious example. Actually, again, if you wanted to find a use for your Kezu Dual Blades, this would be the one. But for pure damage, absolutely, you would really want to go Zinogre. Pookie, again, Thunder here as well. Somnicanth, again, not that we're fighting Somnicanth often, takes really decent thunder damage. I mean, 25%, 65 on the head is very good, especially when he's up on his tail there thingy. You're going to find that the thunder damage actually will carry you quite a bit in terms of getting it toppled over. Nargacuga, excellent thunder damage, especially if you're looking to break those cut wings. This is a really great weapon to bring to the fight, especially if you can fit in a little bit of Part Breaker. And then probably the most important, most relevant for people that are looking to do speedruns would be Tigrex. Tigrex takes better than average damage on the head for Thunder, although it still takes good cutting damage. And especially if you're looking to break the forelegs, if the head's not in a reachable position and you're trying to get an early trip, the 20% Thunder goes quite a long way. And when you're comparing training dummy damage against Tigrex, you're going to see that really goes a really long way. Okay, next up are Fire Dual Blades. We start off Fire Tree. I mean, these things just suck. I mean, they look okay. I kind of like them from a style perspective, but 160 raw is way below usable. 30 fire is okay if there was a way to carry on a major fire boost onto them. Let's pretend they had 40 fire. And they had elemental exploit. Maybe I would do the math on them, but otherwise not really worthwhile. Rathalos seems to be a really popular elemental dual blade for some reason. Kind of interesting. Decent raw. Really one of the best starting amounts of blue on most weapons. Fire boost only takes it up to 29, which is a little bit lower. Elemental exploit is an interesting skill. So we're going to go and break out for a second right now. We're going to talk about elemental exploit. What elemental exploit does is when you're fighting a monster and you're hitting a spot that takes 25% more element, you increase your elemental value by 30%. Now, 30% is a huge boost. 100% it's a huge boost. And on weapons that already have a very high amount of element, when you're going to be consistently striking a elemental weak spot throughout the entire fight, I could see that being very important. However, when we're looking at something like Gas Harag, who you will definitely be attacking its head through a good portion of the fight, although I guess an argument could be made for the foreleg. Likewise, Almudron only takes 20% element on the head. Would actually require you to be attacking the tail. So when you're attacking the tail, Elemental Exploit will be proccing. It will not be proccing on the head. So debatable, just had the thought just now about maybe attacking the forelegs with dual blades on the ground rather than attacking the head. Never really thought about that. Definitely something worth keeping in mind, though, when you're running an elemental weapon, because that is a pretty significant amount of elemental damage he takes. So in a normal scenario, when you're building for full element on the Rathalos dual blades with element exploit, you're going to have 34 element multiplied by elemental exploit means you'll be hitting at 44 element on an elemental weak spot. If you're able to consistently hit with this weapon on an elemental weak spot, so I don't even know how you would do that on Gas Harag with the forelegs. But I guess when his ice clumps up would be fine. Or you felt like you were consistently able to hit Almudron's tail, you'd be hitting at a pretty nutty value. So just putting it up to 44 for Rathalos element means your total 6-fold damage would be 285. Which is not bad. It's going to be higher than our other standard pure element weapon, which is generally what I prefer to run, which is Acnasom. So Acnasom with its elemental goes up to 31. Still has the 190 raw. A little bit less blue sharpness, but it has a level 2 slot. Acnasom is normally going to be sitting somewhere around 41 element. So, ask yourself, would you rather have an extra 3 element only when you're hitting an elementally weak spot and then losing all that element when you're not hitting it? I don't think it's worth it for now, but I think if we were to get whatever, silver and gold later in this game that gave Rathalos another upgrade, it pumped its base value up to say 30 or 31 or some other value around there, I could see this being a really great weapon in the late game, especially, or maybe even when Chameleos comes out. Maybe Chameleos' back legs will have a 25% fire weak spot and its head will have a 25% elemental weak spot, and you just go to town on those two things. Could be the choice to use for there, but for now, if I would just wanted to go A for style and then B for more element, I would choose Acnasom. Now, unfortunately for both of these weapons, the Anjanath dual blades exist. Again, not a huge fan of the style, but 230 base raw, gets up to 26 base fire, minus 15% affinity isn't that big of a deal. Has a level 2 and a level 1 slot. Okay, I'm going to throw up the builds here. Anjanath is a little bit different. It has negative affinity on it by base. As a result, I don't really end up running crit boost on it. I end up running the ingot pants instead, which is not a total loss. They have a really high base raw, so they benefit even more than usual from having a higher level of attack boost. Otherwise, fairly standard. Like I said before, if you don't have this talisman, you would run something along this lines. So then I would assume you'd have a weakness exploit 2. Hopefully with a 1 slot. You would replace Scalda with Anjanath. Then you'd replace your Baroth helm with, you would need a Zinogre. And then obviously you wouldn't have maxed out Razor Sharp, which isn't the end of the world. You could end up finishing up attack this way though. So that's kind of cool. And honestly, this is an alternative. You're just going to be sharpening a little bit more often. But I guess even when you do sharpen, right, you'd have fold speed sharpen. So a little bit of a preference. A little bit more damage though. So That's cool. Works either way. Okay, and Actisom more or less just copies the loadout that we had from Zinogre. Again, 190 raw, not that much far behind Zinogre anyways, so it still benefits from the attack boost. Same deal as before, you could have it copy the alternative Anjanath set. You would still keep the Golden Hakama on for the legs, but then you would replace the Tacit with Anjanath, throw on your Weakness Exploit 2, and then put Zinogre up on top. Okay, a bunch of small fry are really weak to fire in this game. I'm not sure how deep or in detail I need to go. I'll show matchups for Great Baggy right now. Matchups for Arzaros, I guess we'll look at the hind leg hit zone and the rear hit zone. Lagambi, I'll show probably the rear hit zone. That's fine. You're mostly pounding on his butt. Although I'll check to see if you get more damage on the head as well. Royal Ludroth, you would just completely destroy with fire, especially on the head. Baroth, once the mud is gone, and it doesn't take long, his forelegs take very good. You wouldn't normally be attacking the head, but you probably will end up hitting it anyways, and so the fire might actually help contribute a little bit there. Kazu will just take a look at the head. I'll throw the damage numbers up for the legs as well. Big deal, though, of course, is Gossarog. I'll throw up damage numbers right now, a little bit of comparisons for his ice clumps, as well as, I guess, the foreleg. Almudron, I'll throw up comparisons between the head, as well as, we'll just do the tail. I don't know what the tail tep even counts as. All right, and so just to kind of cap everything off, here's a run I did against Tigrex. Funny story about this set. This is actually using Critical Element. So I didn't end up using Critical Element for any of these sets. I finally settled in the process of making this video on some sets that instead more or less relied on attack 4 or more. It's a safer bet, especially for speedrunners or people that just like the piercing bind attack. Leaning a little bit more towards raw will likely end up being a better balance anyways, especially if you're trying to wean yourself off being a crit lit with Nargacuga. So I do feel like that's the right choice. That being said, this still ends up being a pretty good run. I think it still shows that elemental dual blades are definitely good. You know, I'm not a perfect dual blades player by any means. So, you know, as I'm attacking the monster, you know, usually I try to hit the weak spot, but, you know, you'll see, I think even the best players, you'll end up hitting, you know, the chest or the leg or the tail or other non-ideal spots. And that's really where Element shines. And that's where dual blades, I think, really kind of ends up finding not just a huge benefit from its normal ideal combos, but also when you're doing combos that end up kind of missing the mark a little bit. So I don't know what the best opportunity is on a down. I do know that Piercing Bind into Demon Dance is great damage. If you wanted to do an evasion into Sixfold Strike, if you didn't have, I don't know, you could almost always like squeeze out a Demon Dance. Do a Demon Dance. Sixfold Strike is a great attack, but Demon Dance, especially with Element, is very good damage. And even when you've got, or especially when you have a Piercing Bind in there, you'll notice that that's a really good opportunity to do that. And we talked a bit about it a little bit in the last video. I know some people really want to run stamina skills on their dual blades, but I don't find it really necessary. I mean, you can't always get dash juice if you really, really want large quantities of it. I think you farm great Combustunas, and then you do Motley Mix, and I think for every 10 you cook, you get 1 dash juice. So it's not, by any means of an imagination, a fast way of doing that, but it is a way of doing that. Lucky flinch there. I was about to get blasted. I could also see we're about to get lucky, like the Diablos is like, I'm on my way. It's actually a lucky run in a lot of ways now that I'm looking at it. Animals got me a pretty good, well-timed sleep. That is my general preference for my animals. I either run 2 gathering and 1 dog, or sorry, I do 1 gathering, 1 dog, or I do 2 gathering, but both of them with the higher end sleep weapons get me 1, if not 2 sleeps a match, which great opportunity to sharpen. Okay, opportunity to also obviously get a little bit extra damage out. I think Diablos more or less just finishes this for me. He does so much damage. I still don't feel like Pokemon is broken. It's really good, and why wouldn't you take advantage of it? But it's not like the sort of thing where I look at it and I'm like, oh, you know, you can beat monsters entirely on its own there. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. We are going to be doing water and ice next. Thank you everybody who replied in the comments before what you wanted to see. Kind of helped gauge the interest on what elements we wanted to do. Put a ton of love and effort and tears and screams in the process of making this video. I changed around things a lot. Like, you may have noticed at one point I was talking about trying to show an alternative combo until I had inspiration and found out a different way that I could build the Acnesom duels so that they actually competed 1-for-1 against Nargacuga for Raw. So that was pretty cool. Pretty happy about that. If you want to support this video, commenting down below. What are your favorite switch skills? What do you like to use on your dual blades? Let me know. Checking me out over at twitch.tv/SDShepherd. I stream every day, in addition to making these fine videos for you guys. Hope you enjoy them. So yeah, what is this? This is almost the exact same set. I run the Sinister arms just for like extra sharpness, I guess, for some reason. And I think I use the Alucanth head for critical element. It's a way to do it, but you don't need to do that. It's fine. All right, so that's it for now. I love you. I hope to get the next video out tomorrow, but my God, this was a lot of work, so I might take a day off. Until next time, good luck. Have a good hunt.